Okay, so I just have a quick read of what we've got going on here. Um, okay, I might just start with this one, Mal, just about the mention of the ketogenic diet study. Everybody asks about this one. It's been something that's been around for a little while, and as you said, I think it'll be really interesting for all of us with this diet to treat study, because it'll give us the real information. The question is really, where is the study being undertaken? But I think you mentioned this is in the States. And scope for Australians to be in it, probably not.
Well, we put in a grant
Okay,
to
yeah,
run it in Australia, so the chance of success is like 10%. So,
yeah,
but we are trying, and if that were funded, then there would be scope. There are some times in epilepsy, if you've got epilepsy, tumor-associated epilepsy, chance to access it clinically. It is being used in epilepsy, so sometimes there is a bit of overlap. Certainly in Victoria, I can tell you at our institute you can access it. So I've had one or two patients get it. It's a difficult program to administer, and it's got its own problems as well. So I think I do feel scientifically answering it's the right way to go, because again it does have side effects and so forth. So. But it's not impossible. We're trying, and clinically, it's there are resources in the epilepsy setting. So if you've got some overlap, that might be a way.
okay, thank you. There's a couple of questions here on meningiomas. I think a lot of our focus has been on the high grade or gliomas in general. So, it's difficult for patients with meningiomas because they do have some effects from surgery, impacts on lifestyle, whereas we don't have a lot of information because a lot of the time there's surgery and not a lot of further treatment after that. They kind of just end up in a pathway that they don't get a lot of support. So this is probably for Mal and Ben. One of the questions here is if there's any research happening for meningiomas, genetic testing, etc., any new information that you can impart.
So, Ben, unless you want to, I've got a strong. So again, I'm again putting through a number of concepts for meningioma specifically, including tomorrow at the SAC. There's not many trials that are targeting it. There are some interesting things coming out of the US. NF2 mutations are in about 55% of meningiomas, and targeting that with FAK inhibition, but we don't currently have access. I don't know if that's going to change in the next 12 months. The good thing about meningiomas are, you've got to tend to have a longer life expectancy, so there's scope for things to change in 1-2 years. But yeah, definitely there are treatments that we're trying to get. There's no interest. Drug companies is just not interested. I've like literally pitched an idea that I think is a very good idea to 5-6 drug companies, and it just it takes 12 months to get to the right people that have power, and then they've got to change their whole program to actually allow investing in this space. So yeah, we're trying. But yeah.
So I know in our centre, because the grade sort of 1-2 meningiomas surgery, but we do see the grade 3s or the atypical. We tend to refer them to the CASP study to see if there's anything that we can target through there. There was another question here about the meningiomas, and I'm not really sure, maybe this is something I need to learn more about, but this person's suggested that the meningiomas run in families and around genetic abnormalities to help, future generations. I don't know that they do unless you've got a familial...
There's NF2, so NF2.
Yeah.
So there are some known.
I suppose the... what do we call them? The genetics clinics.
Yes,
Yeah, so
there's usually some sets of criteria. You need to have it, either multiple or lots of tumours in the family to qualify. But if you think that that's relevant to you, there are many familial cancer centres that can look. But yeah, there are.
I guess just on the point of sending off many of those tumours for molecular sequencing, often one of the things which I didn't mention earlier in my presentation is that we do sometimes find mutations that are suggestive of familial traits, and often that sort of testing will identify when you're recommended to sort of go to one of the familial genetics clinics where they may have other sort of further testing to look into that further.
I think BTAA do support for meningioma and provide resources, don't they? So I suppose, utilising some of the support, groups that you've got, such as BTAA, to actually have a look at what resources that'll give you a bit of a trigger to then go and look for those places that offer these services is another way of looking at it. Now, I've not heard of this one at all. So there's somebody's written here about a book called The Selfish Gene, for the layman to understand, a book by Richard Dawkins, wanting to know, is the book still relevant, or the information in the book still relevant, and are there any other better books that anybody knows of that are available? Anybody heard of this book?
I read that book when I was in high school. It's really sad. Probably not relevant directly to today's presentation. I think that's a very good book about evolutionary biology. So, but nevertheless, interesting to read, but I don't think there's things in there that would suggest are necessarily relevant to
the making
cancer
of
treatment.
a doctor back then, Ben.
I guess the other question is what other books would I recommend, but I have to take that one on notice.
Yeah, okay. Is there any other questions from the room that anybody can think of at the moment? Okay. Do you want to read your question for us?
I have a meningioma, and just my question is, it's one of those things that you don't seem to be able to give an answer, but it appears that possibly hormones or scientific, things like, yeah, it's possible that hormones plays quite a big impact. It appears that there's a lot of younger generation now coming down with meningiomas. I mean, as apart from myself, who's a senior lady. Do you have any thoughts on that?
I think it's very well known that it is hormone driven. So the studies targeting the hormone pathways haven't worked from actually about 20 years ago. And it's also well known that there's an increase in meningioma around the world, which some of it's also to do with ageing. So both of those things are definites, but the strategies that have, for instance, worked in breast and prostate cancer haven't translated into meningioma, and we don't know why. But yes, it is definitely probably not high up on people's agenda today, but the flip side of that is people did look into it pretty closely about 20 years ago.
Okay. Just a question around, I think Ben and Mel touched on this a little bit before, but in regard to glioblastoma, just the survival rate, being 5% over 5 years, this person's asking where the breakthroughs will come from. I suppose that comes around to trials.
I don't know if you want to... I mean, I think it's incremental. I really do. I think everything's incremental. All of these little steps that, take us closer. So I don't think it's going to be one place. That's my feeling.
Thanks. Yes, I think that's really the elephant in the room. That's why we're all here. I don't need to sort of say the survival in glioblastoma and many brain tumours hasn't shifted, but I agree with Mel, as you can see in some of the examples I showed today, where we've, done trials and seen some of these sort of biomarkers that might apply to small proportions of patients. Often it's after we run clinical trials that we get these insights, so they're not always sort of eureka moments, but often things that where a scientist might see something noticed in the clinic, like the IDH is one example, and then it's not till many years later that we see how to apply that. So I think the combination of running these trials systematically, but also making sure that we gain the maximum information out of trials, even the ones that are negative, will be where we sort of see advances. And I think some of those sort of therapies may end up being sort of combination therapies, but we don't know where the next breakthrough is going to come from.
Yeah, I have to say, we feel to some degree like we haven't had a lot of movement forward in regard to glioblastoma, but in the years that I've been in my role, the advances in the molecular profiling, the imaging, the surgery, the support, the care has gone tenfold, so I think that we look at it in regard to new drugs coming on, but I think people are living longer just already by the stuff that we've done in regard to better surgery support, these other things. So we are getting there. It's not all doom and gloom, I guess. I just quickly wanted to mention the brain tumours online. This is something that I was sort of beginning to be part of some years ago. I think this was part of one of the MRFF. Sarah Bray, where are you? Help me here. Yeah, so it sounds like this is now coming to fruition. Is that right? Which is great. So I know that this was sort of all one of, help me here, Kate Drummond's sort of things down here in Melbourne, and it's now come on. So this is a Brain Tumours Online, which has been co-designed by patients, carers, health professionals, whatnot. And it's basically to provide reliable information, self-care tools, supportive stuff in the community for people affected by brain tumours. So is it something that will be sort of a bit of a portal for other groups like the Brain Cancer Group, BTAA, Peace of Mind, as a one-stop shop that people can then go to look for reliable information? Is that the aim?
Yeah, that's the goal. Is this working?
Yes.
Yeah, so we spent 2 years co-designing this website with patients, carers and healthcare professionals and researchers, and then we spent another 12 months asking patients and carers and healthcare professionals to use the site in a research environment so that they could give us feedback on what's working, what's not working, where we could improve things in the future. And that 12-month period is coming to an end now, and we're just tweaking a few things on the website and hoping to go publicly live at the end of November. So at the moment you can't access it, but in another month we'll be removing the login requirement, and so everyone can go in and look at it. And it's got webinars with healthcare professionals where you can submit your own questions. It's got a social media community. It's got online support tools and lots of information and links to all these different things like Peace of Mind, BTAA, everything you can just find in one spot. So yeah.
Can you let us and everybody know when it comes live? We'll put it all out.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. And I've put a little flyer out the front with the QR code and things
that I'd
too.
be interested in is who updates it. Like, is there, because that's the one thing that we've found in the past with some of the online and even some of the support groups and charitable organisations, is just keeping the websites updated and relevant. That's the hard bit.
Yeah, at the moment that's me.
Yeah.
But that's one of the things I love about the site is it's very flexible, and I update it all the time based on people sending in a question. They'll say, I want to have more information on XYZ. Then I go and email some healthcare professionals, say, can we have a Q&A webinar on this topic? Like, I'm getting a lot of questions on fatigue or how to deal with uncertainty or something like that. And then a couple of months later we organise that and people can submit their questions, and then we have a little panel and we make a video so that it's available even if you couldn't tune in live for the session. So we're always adding new content based on questions that people submit to us and say, this is a gap where I don't know who to turn to or where to find the right information.
Yeah, okay. Thanks
Yeah.
very much.
Thank you.
I think we might wrap up. We've just sort of hit right on 12:15, so it's time for lunch, and then we'll reconvene at the back at 1:15 for the next session. So thank you everybody who presented this morning. Much appreciate your time because I know you do it for nothing. So much appreciated. You can have some lunch. Thank you.